Hey everyone, this is Rocky from WeLearnChess.com, and today I've got just a short video to show this defense that I've mentioned in some previous videos against the King's Gambit, called the Fischer defense. And below the video, I'll put some resources to videos that cover this even in more detail. There's a short video series on the Sean G. Godley YouTube channel. This is a great channel, by the way. A lot of he's got some different content, but he's a lot of good chess stuff. So I highly recommend that you check that out. He's got a three-part series on this article by Bobby Fischer from, I don't know, 1960 or something, a long time ago, on recommending this defense after he had, I think, lost a game or drew a game to Spassky. I can't remember. I think he lost it. But in any case, just want to show you the ideas here. Something that you can play. It is it's a little bit tricky to play at first. It takes some practice, but once you get the hang of it, it's kind of a nice system. So, White plays the King's Gambit. You take this. Now, obviously, when you take this, you're gonna probably have to play a defensive game. So there are other ways that you can play against the King's Gambit. Like you can play the Falkbeer counter Gambit, which is an immediate d5. That's fun to play and actually pretty decent. And there's a video on the Chess Explained channel that recommends this and shows some variations. So actually, I'll put a link to all this stuff up below the video. There's a lot of good content on it, and I might go back to playing that at some time. And it's kind of fun, and it's more active than the Fischer defense. The Fischer defense is really solid. If you play it correctly, you can pretty much, as he claims in his article, you can pretty much almost win every game. But the problem is it's not easy at all, because White has some ways to make life difficult for Black. There's other ones that you can play too, like you can play this Adelaide counter Gambit, which is also super wild, where you can get something like this. I think. I forget. I might be doing the move order wrong already. That's also fun and totally insane for both sides with traps right down to the opening. Okay, but anyway, this is especially if you're more of like a sort of a solid defense setup kind of player. This is it's a little bit easier to play if it's more your style. And it's not really my style to play these sort of solid defensive setups, but I've just had pretty good success with this in the Fischer defense. So if he plays knight f3, then you start with d6. And if he plays bishop c4, the bishop's gambit, then I recommend that you look at my other video on this with here an immediate d5 being a really interesting move. And I still haven't gotten to play that because most people play knight f3, but you do come across this. So definitely check out my other video and the other post on that, on the bishop's gambit. So usually you'll see knight f3, d6, which just kind of takes one square away from the knight, slows down this possible pawn advance. Usually White will play bishop c4 here, and now you play this other move, and it looks kind of provocative because you're playing all these pawn moves, but the idea is to set up just kind of a nice sort of, I won't say solid king side. You're probably going to castle king side, but White's usually going to castle king side too, so even though your pawns are a little bit advanced, it's hard for him to sort of bust you open, and there are lines to go for that, so you have to be careful. I can show you some of those in another video where White plays for an early h4, but that's got to be like its own video because those are actually probably White's better chances. But I want to show you a game here where if White doesn't do something totally crazy right out of the opening, how you can get a pretty good position. And if you don't believe me, you can look here. I'll leave the analysis on the whole time, so you'll see it's in Black's favor, even though I don't make nearly the best moves in this game. You'll see that it's negative in favor of Black the entire game. I don't think I give it up even on a single move. Okay, so after White castles, if he does castle, then you would play g5. Also, a common move here is d4, and that can come earlier too, like here. So usually knight f3. Okay, so sometimes here you have to be careful not to pre-move your moves because here, obviously, your pawn's under attack. Now, if you're going to play this solid defensive setup and try to keep the pawn, then you should keep the pawn. Otherwise, you just, if you drop this pawn like you're pre-moving and you play something like this here and then, oops, now you're behind in development and you don't have anything to show for it. I mean, you don't have any pieces out, and now it's going to get really dangerous for you. So you do have to keep this pawn if you're playing this way, I think. But if you're going to play a different, like the Falkirk counter gambit or something like that, obviously you can give up the pawn. That's not the idea in those systems. Okay, but in this system, the idea is to keep the pawn. So here you would have to play g5 first, just to protect the pawn, and then it'll transpose into this, and then you'll play h6, or you can actually maybe first even bishop g7 might have been interesting, just in case he does like this early h4 stuff, because the bishop here protects the rook. So actually, oh, the computer's nuts. The computer wants to just go g4. I mean, I haven't. This is actually the best move, but I haven't gone this crazy yet. I'm just trying to show you how to do this like solid defensive setup. But it's worth looking at this stuff in the computer and seeing what these really good lines, because here g4 gives black a good advantage. But anyway, a lot of times your opponents are going to make these moves pretty automatically out of the opening anyway. So at least for a while, I think you should get the system down first, and then you can start looking at some of the crazier stuff. But okay, so anyway, usually this is what you'll see, one of these two variations with either bishop c4 or d4. This also keeps the knight out of this square, because a lot of times it likes to jump in and put pressure on f7, so it's an important move, even though it's really slow. So here either you see castle, or again you might see d4, so again be careful and be ready to play g5 to protect your pawn. Okay, now he finally plays it. I think this guy actually maybe was... I don't know if he plays this regularly because he wasn't attacking quite as aggressively. I think King's Gambit players, after they play a while, they realize that their best chance is to keep attacking. So you get people who are sacrificing between like 1 and 3 pieces in the opening, trying to get at f7 or pin your king here. And it is really tough when your king's pinned in this area, especially when your whole queenside's blocking any sort of routes back. So anyway, you want to put your knight here. This is going to allow you to castle. It's also going to allow your knight to go to some interesting squares, like from g6. If you can get it there later, the knight often can either come up to e5, or you can get your knight to f5 and then up to e3, which is also fun. And that's what I do in this game. This is, I think, what Bobby Fischer recommended, the best move for white in this position. Here you can just castle and your rook protects f7. So it looks pretty crazy to castle onto the side, but remember, he's also castled on the side, and because he hasn't gone for these early H lines anyway, H pawn pushes, you're pretty safe. I think he's going to have to weaken his king too if he wants to do something now. White does get some good pressure, and it's not easy to maneuver your pieces as black. He's got nice central control. His bishops are going to be, well, his dark square bishop takes a while to get in the game, but his light square bishop's kind of a menace. So you have to be careful of this weak diagonal that you have here. So a lot of times these two pieces will transfer back over to this diagonal and create some threats. You also have to be careful if your knight's on g6 at some point. If there's another piece, either the queen or the bishop on this diagonal, actually this knight would be hanging because this pawn's pinned. So something like, let's just say, for example, you got, I don't know how this would happen, but whatever. Let's say just make some crazy moves here. Whoops. Let's just do something like this. These are like dumb moves from both sides probably. But let's just say you did something like this. This piece would actually be hanging. You can't take it back because this pawn's pinned. So this kind of stuff can happen. So you have to be careful. This h6 pawn can also be weak. Your light squares are weak all over the place. So you can imagine like the queen coming over here. Oops. The queen kind of getting here and then over here, and then maybe him getting a bishop here, and it gets a little dicey, so you always have to look out for what he's trying to do. Just kind of look at, I mean, you should do it anyway, but look at what white's trying to do on each move. Okay, so let's see, castles, and he took some space here, which is interesting. In the game, I'm pretty sure I played a6. Oops. Yeah. This early a4 is interesting because a lot of times you might want to play b5 and just kick this bishop out. But okay, he stops that idea. So bring the knight to c6 here is a little bit better than d7, I think, sometimes, because that would block off your bishop. But I don't know, the computer actually likes knight d7 better here because I I think the computer has some idea of playing c5, which I didn't see in the game, and I never really look at that move. But the whole idea is to set up this like dark square blockade on e5. I guess I can show you that. I've never actually done that. The computer, I think, wanted to even play c5 back here. But, yeah, this is the computer's idea here. So this idea for white is just to clamp down these pawns and make it hard to gain space and get your bishop out, I guess. So yeah, here just like c5. Well, if he was to take this, which is sort of what I was looking. Well, here actually, because the queen's there, you can even take with the knight. But even if you just take with the d pawn, and so okay, he starts to set this up behind your queen. I guess that's another reason to do that. But also, just queen c7 is also keep an eye on e5. So look at all these pieces you have on e5. Plus this other knight's going to come to g6. So you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even a rook, 5 pieces on that square. So you're going to set up sort of this solid setup. So the computer just gives a couple moves here just to show you. I feel like it's recommending different moves than it did before. Knight c6. Oh, knight c6 achieves the same idea, right? You're also keeping an eye on e5, but I guess it's a better square. So you can just look at all the pieces here, and then rook b8, I guess, just gets out of a tempo. So like after you move this knight away, it's not guarding this square, then your rook's not under attack when he moves there. So I can't explain all these moves, I guess, but yeah, here now you're going to get a lot of trades, and trades are usually in your favor, especially if you can get the queens off. The closer you can get to an endgame is usually great for you as black, because not only are you up a pawn, but you've got these nice sort of already advanced pawns, usually advancing your pawns in the endgame if you can do so, in a smart way, of course. It's going to help you get more pressure in the endgame as you get closer to fewer pieces on the board. So here, if we get something like this, I don't know how much it matters if you take with different pieces here, to be honest. Yeah, here maybe just to keep pieces on the board. Well, you could try to plant this knight in here. Yeah, I mean, you're getting trades here. I guess the other nice thing is you could probably bring your bishop out and trade, but you want to be careful about trading this light square bishop sometimes because your light squares are so weak. If you can manage to swing your light square bishop around, sometimes I do that and I get it here. Like if you can pin the knight and then bring it back and come over, sometimes that's interesting. I don't know how much the computer likes that plan though, so it's just something to think about. Like here, I wouldn't want to let my light square bishop get taken, and the computer agrees, so just putting it on e6, just kind of the idea of getting your bishop 2 squares straight away from a knight usually covers a lot of squares that it could jump to, so you can just take it in case it tries to cause problems. But okay, so this was the idea of bringing the knight over. So this is a good point here where the bishop has all these light squares where the knight can go. So you can just take it. So you do have to give your bishop for the knight, but again, you're getting closer to the end. So that was just one idea that the computer gave, which was this whole thing started with c5. But I didn't play that in the game. Let's get back to the game here. I played knight c6 with the idea of playing knight a5, just forking these 2 pieces. So as soon as you play knight c6, a lot of times you'll get a tempo. White has to do something here to address it, and actually a better way to do it is just to play a5. I didn't think about that, because that stops you from playing knight a5. Obviously it's covered by the rook. But what a lot of players will do is they'll start to move their pieces back. Like they'll see this fork, because it's happened to them before, I'm sure. So, like what my opponent does in the game is just moves this bishop and, starts to reorganize onto this diagonal. So, still knight a5 just to gain a tempo on the queen. This isn't a great square for the knight, to be honest, so I wasn't sure if I should play it, but the computer likes it. You'd have to find a way to get back in the game, so you have to be careful. The computer keeps liking c5, and you can see I'm not making actually very great moves to put pressure on my opponent. And I should look for ways to do that. Sorry, some background noise here because I got my window open this morning because it's such a beautiful day, and then I guess the garbage truck came by. Okay, pushes my knight back, and then there's an interesting tactic here. One of the nice things about having your bishop on this diagonal is it's going to oppose this rook, and also until he moves his king, there are often tactics on these diagonals, so you should look out for them. And I missed this opportunity here where I could have just taken this. There's a pin-in effect now, so if you were to take this, I just grab this with check, and I'm going to get a clean rook here. So the computer even wants to just start, getting as much as he can for the queen. Just taking this and taking this here. And, he's got some good material for the queen. It's just better. And King's Gambit players do tend to see that sometimes, I think. Although, of course, they like to have their queens on the board. Venus, obviously, if he just moves his king, then you just take this, and he can't even take it back, which is terrible. So you're going to be able to drop this back to g7 or maybe f6, depending. So I missed that opportunity there on a couple moves, actually. So what did I do in the game? I just played this, which actually isn't very good. I actually almost never play d5 because I don't like him having the e5 square. Like a lot of times, if if white plays e5, I don't take this pawn because I don't want, like right now his knight's pin, but I don't like when his knight can jump into e5. So a lot of times, like, let's just make some dumb moves. But if he were to take this, I usually take this, and this just keeps an eye on this square so that the knight can't jump in here. I just like to leave that pawn there. It's not a terrible idea, but okay, those moves didn't make any sense, obviously. Okay, so he dropped back here. This is a sign that maybe he's not such a normal King's Gambit player. I don't think, because he's not putting enough pressure on me. Like, you can feel it when players are, really versed in this King's Gambit, where they're really pressuring you for move one and just don't let up. It is an attacking opening, so okay, so I missed the tactic here, and I played a not so great move, but okay. He's lining up his pieces here. You have to be careful. I told you these light squares are weak, so he wants to move this pawn and play checkmate. Now the nice thing about having your knight on e7, which goes way back into the early opening part of the game, is that sometimes you can put your bishop on f5 and it's protected by the knight and it guards your light squares. That's another reason for it, and that's happened to me in a lot of games. So here I was able to just set up a pin, and the game goes downhill here for him. I didn't exploit the pin as well as I could, and I could have played my knight up to d5 earlier rather than later. Okay, anyway, I didn't make full use of the pin here, so the reason I played this move is that I want him to be able to move his knight with check, so he can't jump out of the pin. So anyway, this is another point. If you can get your knight to f5 or to d5, you can get up to e3, and then he's got to consider sacrificing the exchange, which he could probably do. So here he just dropped a piece, and here we had, like, I don't know, there's still a couple minutes left in the game, but it's understandable that he tried a little bit, but then in the very end, he just played on time, which is, I'm sorry, like, I know it's kind of a stereotype, but like here, he's just trading everything, and he's down a piece, and he doesn't even have a pawn for it because he gave up a pawn in the earlier part of the game. Like, a lot of times you get one pawn for a piece, so it's like, okay, maybe you can do something, like maybe you have two connected passers or a passed pawn or something in exchange for your lost piece. But in the King's Gambit, because you gave up a pawn in the opening, if you count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, he's even down a pawn still for the piece, so because he lost another one. But anyway, I don't know. Like, now we're moving pretty fast, but like, he has absolutely no chance of winning this endgame. He doesn't really even have a chance to draw it, probably. But yeah, he's just moving back and forth. And I'm sorry, but like, I've played so many King's Gambit players, and like 99% of the time they're just horrible sports. Like, they disconnect, they play on time. Like, when they're lost, they mouth off to you more than anybody else. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, maybe they're just hyper aggressive players. I mean, I'm an aggressive player, so whatever. But and I don't care about trash talk. Like, trash talk can be fun, but just like terrible sports a lot of times. So yeah, like this guy here. Yeah, so we got to this point in the game, and here he sees that he's got like a 10-second advantage, so he just tries to play on time. So what can you do? I was still trying to make good moves, which is probably like that's the downfall sometimes of being a good sport, is like you're still trying to actually play chess and not just out pre-move your opponent, which is so dumb. But he's just moving, and actually this is funny because I only had 3 seconds left, and I found a tactic, and I actually saw this tactic, which is kind of funny. Like, I saw it, but he can't obviously take this because then I just promote. So then you just win a piece, and now I don't know if he had a lag or whatever, but I just started pre-moving, and then he lost on time. So yeah, I don't know. The next move, his clock ran out, but yeah, whatever. Punk. You play on time, you lose on time. That's my motto. All right. So anyway, I hope you got something interesting out of this video. And if you like this idea of this Fischer defense, I recommend that you watch those videos from the other video channels, the Sean G. Godley channel, and the other resources that I'll put up. The original Bobby Fischer article is in the classic notation, but you can get used to it after a little bit. But if you find that hard, you can just watch the videos anyway. So, all right, hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you around.